So, uh, quick shout out. Bo of the Fifth Column always coming clutch with a great video. The one this morning about reparations was awesome. Um, if you haven't seen his channel, go to it. What's up, everybody? So, uh, I posted a comment, which I don't rarely do. I rarely do. Because this whole "don't be racist" thing. It's so complicated. Like the more videos I post, the more videos I watch, the more things I read. Even myself, I've learned like how complicated it is, right? So, but one of the things, like, there's some things. So that whole Mark Meadows thing got me thinking of like the things that like I am just dog tired of hearing. Like one of them is, my black friend, the black friend defense, right? Um, you know, if there's a reason why you never hear a black person say my white friend defense, or get into a situation where they have to use it. Um, Again, I'm not saying that it's probably never happened, but I've never seen it happen. And in discussions with people in general, I've never seen a black person have to use that defense for something that's come out of their mouth. Um, it just doesn't. It's not a thing, right? It's not a thing. Um, I don't know where the black friend defense came from. I've been trying to find out like where and why that's even a thing. But I think it's like a panic mode. As far as I can tell, it's like a panic thing. Like, well, I know black people, so I'm not mean to them directly. So what I'm saying can't be racist. I think that's what it comes down to. I think it's like a panic. Um, so again, this is not about people who are racist. I just want people to clarify before I get too deep into this. This is about saying racist things. Okay, like just because you something racist came out of your mouth doesn't actually make you racist, unless you actually intended to say something racist and you feel good about that. Like that makes you feel great to say racist things. But there's no way to really know if someone is a quote unquote racist. You know what I mean? Like, let's just be real. Like, I don't know what's in your heart. I can only judge you by your actions. If I don't know you and just say something racist, if you're not dressed up like a skinhead or a Klansman, chances are there's a high possibility you don't even realize what you said was actually racist. And it's the responsibility of the offended party to let them know they were offended, and if possible, have a discussion to explain to them why what they said is actually racist. um, Again, it is incumbent on the offended to explain why they were offended, not the offender to explain why they're not offensive. um, if that makes sense. um, that being said, like someone says something's racist, if you say something and you offend someone and they tell you it's offensive because X, you are not in a position to say that that's not true, because you are the offending party, not the offended party. Um, Especially if that person has justification as to why they're classifying your offense as racist. Which a lot of time, I will say a lot of the time where I mean I don't even bring up racism. Like I talk about this a lot so far on my channel, partly because it's like big time news. Something's been bothering me for a long time, but I've never been in a situation. I won't say never, but I have not. I don't every day get into a situation where I hear something racist and then I, fly off the handle, say, "Hey, you're being racist." Like that's not a. I'm not looking for that opportunity, and I don't believe that that is the common culture among black people. Um, I don't think we're going around like it's a whole lot of energy that we don't really have time for as human beings. But back to what I was saying. So the black friend defense, it's just annoying. It's tired. Like if you are in educated circles, you hear it so much. It's literally like it's like it's like white noise, but just turned up on 100. Like it's noise. because it's complete and utter bullshit. Like there's no, it's stupid. It doesn't make sense on its face, right? If you turn the situation around and I say something offensive to you based on, if you're a white person, I say something offensive based on your color, right? And then I tell you, well, I can't be racist. I have white friends. Well, here's the thing: there is not a black person on this planet that doesn't know a white person, right? There's just on the law of numbers. There is, I don't think that it is quite possible for you to be black in America and not know a white person, but that doesn't prevent you from being prejudiced. You see what I'm saying? So I can't. So it's a stupid defense, right? But moving on from that, um, I posted this comment, or it was like a response. Someone posted a comment and about Black Wall Street and Wall Streets, because there was more than one. The most famous one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. But their response was like, if you keep living in the past, you're gonna die angry. And so it's two things. One, that's just a really eloquent way of saying that's in the past, to get over it, right? And I don't think people that know about Black Wall Street, just in general, black people that know about Black Wall Street, know the details of how, what, why it happened, are running around angry over it. It's just, when you think about it, it is kind of disgusting to know that our country bombed our own country and then proceeds not to even close to acknowledge it over, lo and behold, a false accusation of rape. Like, what else? We bombed the whole region. The richest city in America at one point was bombed over a false accusation. A riot that removed an entire city from their homes. It is frustrating when you think about it, but I don't think black people are running around being angry about it, right? So that whole "get over it," you were never a slave, you weren't there, get over it, is a racist comment. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you don't know what it's like. If you're not black, right, you don't know what it's like to open up a history book or go to a history class and see you in that history book as less than human, right? Well, I learned about Black Wall Street in college. I didn't even learn that in high school. I learned that in college, in my junior year in college. So when I learned about that, it was kind of infuriating, because I don't know any white people that can open a book and know that the government bombed a city full of people that look just like them, right? That's not a thing. And the fact that it's not acknowledged, like our country has not come to terms with the wealth that was lost when the Black Wall Streets. I mean, the one in Tulsa is significant because they had their own exchange, their own stock exchange. Money stayed in the city. Money came in and never left. For every $10 that came in, and that's a lot of money at that time, very little of it actually came out. They were an exporter of goods within the country. But that get over it is, no, I wasn't a slave. My grandmother was born a slave. My grandfather was born a slave. My great-grandfathers and my great-grandmothers were slaves. I had one great-grandmother that was Cherokee. And she hid, she became part of my family, because instead of, when she was forced from her home, she, there were people in the town where some of my father's family are from that helped hide, Cherokee men and women, because they didn't want to leave. Like, they knew at this point, by the time this happened, when they got to that part of Georgia anyway, those who lived further east, when they got to that part of Georgia, they knew this wasn't a thing they wanted to do. So all along the way, there are places where they could hide and kind of make a new life. And that's where my great-grandmother comes from, and why my grandmother is part Cherokee. Actually, I think it was my great-grandmother. And no, I don't know what it's like to experience Jim Crow. My dad does. My dad's much older. He's over 80. My dad does. And growing up in Georgia, there are a lot of reminders, even though they may not be visual, but when I was a kid, there was a lot of reminders of the South. No, did people run around calling me the N-word? Oh, I mean, no, but yes. I mean, like, I've been called the N-word a lot. I've been beaten up when as a kid. Like, I may not have experienced Jim Crow, but there was times I got jumped because I was black. Living in an area of a suburb of Atlanta that at the time was mostly white. I remember being the only black kid in school and the amount of crap I had to take for that. I remember all the dirty pranks that I got played on me. I remember all the times that I was treated poorly by teachers. You don't forget that, right? And the thing is, because of that, telling me to get over slavery, when I know that the reason, if I go back, if you go back, why was I treated? Why did my third grade teacher allow me to urinate on myself? I asked to go to the restroom. This is a situation. Her name is Ms. May, at Mount Bethel Elementary School. I'll throw that out there all day. I asked to go to the bathroom, and she said, no, you have to wait. And so then, we had lunch pretty early at my school. So 3 other kids, again, I'm one of 3 black kids in the whole school at the time. But 3 other kids went to the bathroom. Obviously, they're white because I'm the only black kid in my class at this time. And so then I asked again, like, well, they went. When he comes back, can I go to the restroom? She said no. Well, she waited. She let 4 or 5 more kids go. And again, this is something that you don't forget, because it's pointed out to you that the only reason, I was in the 3rd grade, it was very obvious why she wouldn't let me go. It wasn't because I was a boy, because she let boys go. She let girls go and boys go. It wasn't because I didn't ask, because they asked. One of them just got up and left. It wasn't because I didn't say the right words, because I thought that was it. I literally tested every single possibility right there in the moment. And the only thing I could think of in the 3rd grade is because you're black. It wasn't because my dad told me that white people are racist. I never thought that. I had not had a personal experience negative with a white person until that moment. But she waited until I want to say around 1. It had to have been around 1 because lunch had been come and gone. It had been like 3 hours before she let me go to the bathroom. And I didn't make it. Like, I didn't make it. And so I came back, fully embarrassed, and asked to get a pass to go to the office to go get a change of pants. And she got angry at me. Like, she yelled at me for disrupting the class. And that was the first time I heard an adult use the N-word, by the way. So, she took me to the office, and if I remember correctly, she said something that I don't, something, she grabbed me by the hand, and she got another assistant teacher to watch the class. We had like an assistant in the other, and then the class next door. So that teacher's assistant came, watched the class, and then she took me to the office. And I remember her being kind of rough. She get to the office, she said something, and she was talking with another administrator. But the thing that stuck with me, literally my entire life, is that I can't have these niggers disrupting my class. And I was like, what's a nigger? Like, I'd never heard that word before. And I was like, whoa. She was very forceful about it. It's one of those things you never forget. And then you learn what that means. And it's like, whoa. But when you trace that back, right? As an adult, I'm able to, look back at things and understand, like, why would she think that way? Why would she say that? Why would she do that? So then you go back. Well, she did that because that's what she was taught. Well, why would they teach her that? And then you go back and you keep going, It's because that's what the culture was. The culture was like that during slavery. That trope, that Gone with the Wind trope of what the South was like. That shit was horrible. It bred a callous personality into the hearts and minds of white people in the South. period. Um, so telling me to get over it, to get over slavery, when there are people in my lifetime that they weren't over it, obviously. They didn't get over it. Why should I get over it? Furthermore, who said that I'm going around dwelling about it? Every time someone brings it up, it's like, well, you weren't a slave, get over it. Well, first off, why are you telling me to get over it? Like, like I'm going around dwelling on it all day long. 'Cause that's not the case. And I don't think anyone really is, right? It's just very condescending. If you don't know what it's like to live knowing that, and knowing that not only are you not recognized, right? As at some point you wouldn't have been a full citizen, and the country decided to. Right now, our country basically denies that even occurred. There are people who were alive then, who were okay with that, deny that they were okay with that, right? And then at some point in this country, like I could have been killed for looking at a white woman in their general direction, or somebody just decided, you know what, I don't like this nigga, I'm gonna hang him. And our country literally denies the history of lynching in our country post-slavery, let alone during slavery, right? The slavery itself is not even fully acknowledged. Promises made, the reparation promises that were made and then 100% broken and then some to black people in this country, and our country denies it. So if anybody should get over it, it's the people that keep lying about it, right? So, and it's the comments like, if you're angry, well, no, black people aren't angry, right? They're just frustrated, because the only people who talk about race the most is not black people. I literally, like, seriously, short of this channel, is probably the most I've talked about race my entire life. If people ask me about race, it ain't from black people, it's from white people. White people, I find, talk about race more than black people. Maybe I'm the anomaly, but I tend to think that that's probably the case. So clearly, they thinking about it too. White people, y'all thinking about it too. So the other thing that was kind of bothering me was that we should be grateful to the Europeans for who stole us from our land, and that whole, well, your people sold you into slavery, which very partly is true. But you have to remember that Europe colonized almost all of Africa. I mean, all of Africa has been colonized, like literally all of it has been colonized. At some point in its history, it was colonized. Those places, those borders were drawn by Europeans. They weren't drawn by Africans. So claiming that Africans just sold other Africans to slavery, first off, there was a bait and switch there, because it wasn't like, let's not pretend like the Europeans had painted a full picture. Like, sell us this person so we can rape them and then force them to do labor that in a place that you don't know. It wasn't like that wasn't the case, right? That wasn't the case. Furthermore, there were slaves in Africa. I mean, let's not pretend like that didn't happen. There were slaves literally all over Africa. Africa was literally a slave continent. And I don't mean other Africans enslaving other Africans. I literally mean European countries, England, France, Germany, well, not so much Germany, but England, France, Italy, for the northern part, Belgium, Portugal. They all had colonies in Africa. Actually, Germany did have colonies in Africa. And they had slaves. They took slaves and they beat the shit out of them and they raped them and they killed them. Belgium was the worst. What do you think they sent? We look at the triangle trade. One thing we don't even talk about in our history is they didn't just, slaves that were problem slaves, they didn't just, beat them up or cut the foot off. That's stupid. Why would you damage that, right? Those were only done by plantation owners who could afford to do that, right? Or didn't have a connection to send that slave or trade that slave somewhere else. But let's just be real. Problem slaves were sent back to the Caribbean for more breaking. Problem slaves were sent to Belgium. Sent to the Belgian Congo. Especially toward the end of American slavery. Because they didn't have enough people. They were cutting their hands off and they were dying from sepsis and and gangrene. Like, it's just like, stop pretending like Africa was such this hateful place toward other Africans, which is not the case. Um, but then bringing that full circle, the response was, if it weren't for Europeans, Africa would be this place where people were starving to death, and they were primitive, and they wouldn't be able to survive. But for thousands of years, there have been people living on the continent of Africa, doing just fine. I'd argue probably better than some of them are doing right now. Now, if we're talking standards of European living, no. But if we're talking about standards of like no disease, there wasn't a whole lot of diseases that they're there now. That wasn't a thing. Um, Hunger, that wasn't a thing in Africa. Furthermore, the knowledge in Africa that was stolen from Africa, the first university on the planet was in Africa. The first library on the planet was in Africa. We're not taught that in school. And the fact that you would say I should be grateful that, let me get this straight, I should be grateful that my family, and I've done my DNA test, so people that are related to me directly were taken by force, right, from Nigeria to the United States and settled in Georgia, and then forced to pick cotton by force. And during that time, they were raped. Both men and women were raped. They were bred like animals. They were beaten worse than animals. They were maimed for trying to run. And then after that, during all of the knowledge that we came with and used to make that life easier was stolen again, now twice stolen. Like the cotton gin, if you view the history of the cotton gin for a prime example, anything we invented was then patented by those owners and never received credit for, which some of those inventions made them rich. And then after slavery, our promises, we were supposed to get 40 acres and a mule, didn't get that, but instead was culturally and systematically harassed and tormented and terrorized by groups, bombed in our own cities by our own government. And then again, all the knowledge that we acquired and innovation from having to take very little and make something with it was stolen, not acknowledged. If we did get the patent for it, not acknowledged. Still to this day, not acknowledged. And then we ask for equal rights, not really getting the full equal rights, and still getting harassed. Meanwhile, monuments to our enslavers are being put up in our own backyards and our schools named after it. And then all that ingenuity and all of the great things we do don't get acknowledged. The fact that I'm recording this video on a cell phone and uploading it to the internet, the black people who put in the man hours and the patents that they hold aren't even acknowledged in that, right? And still don't even get full recognition. And then to make it all better, when someone else brings the conversation up or does something that is like really offensive, we point it out and then we're just told to get over it, or we should be thankful, right? But here's the thing that trips me out though, right? In the same conversation, I've had this conversation before, and someone was being real rude about it, and they were like, they said that crap. By the way, a lot of that stuff comes from the Klan. So if you're not cool with the Klan, stop saying that. I'm being from Georgia, and I learned where that stuff comes from. If you don't like the Klan, stop saying Klan stuff. Go back to Africa, Klan stuff. You should be thankful, Klan stuff. If you don't like the Klan, don't say that. But then, so I had this conversation. I was like, after I've been to, by going to college and taking history classes and learning origins of things, like, it was hilarious at how offended that person got when I pointed out the fact that Europeans didn't bathe every day before they met Africans. Africans bathed every day. Generally, the continent of Africa was very clean. The concept of daily bathing started in Africa. If you go and look at um, some of the Muslim conquerors when they came through, some of the other empires that interacted with Egypt, the concept of soap, yeah, that's an African thing. And they were taught to, they taught anybody that came, it's like, look, you can come here, you don't keep yourself clean. You're not gonna walk around here funky, right? But on more than one occasion throughout history, it wasn't just once, Africans taught white people how to bathe daily. And I pointed that out to someone who was trying to be like trying to get snarky with me. And he brought up the conversation, and I was like, look, man, I don't want to have this conversation. And I was like, I forgot what it was about, but then he quickly jumped to, well, Africa would be all uncivilized. Like, and I quote, y'all motherfuckers wasn't bathing yourself before we showed up. Before we showed up in your city, you weren't bathing yourself. You were throwing doo-doo in the streets, right? Go back and watch. Go back and look at the history. Go back and look at the history of Europe. Literally, the concept of potpourri in Europe precedes the concept of soap in Europe, right? Holding flowers over your nose to cover up the stench of yourself and those around you was the way they got around the funkiness of Europeans. And I'm not saying Europeans are bad for that. My thing is, history is a funny thing. History has it has some funny little tidbits in it. But don't sit up here and say I should be thankful when I should be thankful for the torture that I myself have endured. I should be thankful that I got beat up for being black. I should be thankful because the roots of that goes back to slavery. I should be thankful for people driving down the street throwing stuff at me, calling me the N-word, teachers treating me poorly, calling me the N-word. I should be thankful for that because if it had not been for that, I wouldn't be in America. America's so great. I love my country. But let's stop pretending like the bad things that black people and people of color have to go through is like some badge of honor. We should be grateful to that mistreatment in the now and in the history. When, again, I could just as snarkily say, y'all nasty asses wasn't washing your ass before you had black people in your cities. Rome, Greece, the Ottoman Empire, they went through some funky times. England, y'all, they didn't bathe, literally did not bathe. You're talking about cultures that bathe daily from top to bottom. Not just the rich people, but everybody took baths on a regular basis. And even during slavery times, just keep it real. Let's just keep it real. Even during slavery times, the slaves found a way to bathe daily. Where you had overseers that would routine. I don't know, like there are stereotypes that have true origins, and one of the stereotypes that is commonly said, kind of pulling back the curtain, is that white people smell funny. That stereotype comes from somewhere, and it comes from one of the places it comes from is that the white overseers on plantations were sometimes poor whites that could not afford to bathe every day. Could not afford to keep their teeth clean every day, but the slaves were actually cleaner than their overseers. That was the point. Like the point was that like, if you want to be offensive, we can go toe to toe on offensive, and it's not that hard. But like, don't tell me I should be thankful for that. I should not have to be thankful for the depravity of one culture over another because I so happen to be born here in the United States. I shouldn't have to say thank you, boss, and just take it, if you will. Hence the name of the video. Again, if I say it again, if you say something that is offensive to a black person and you are white, and that what you said was racist, just know they are not calling you racist. Which I think is like the N word for white people. I've come to realize it's got to be the N word for white because I've never seen white anybody white get that upset when they think they've been called a racist. Um, I mean, more upset than black people get when being called the N word. Like it's kind of it's almost amusing sometimes. But if a black person points you out for saying something that's racist, they are not calling you racist. And if you calm down and don't flip out, you might learn something. But the black friend response is actually racist. The black friend defense is racist. Period. It's like a cop out. Like that's the best you got. Like you said something that was offensive, and the best you got. Well, I have a black friend, so I can't. Like seriously, always think about, and it's something that I've learned. Always think about if you were to switch it around, flip it around, right? If you're curious as to why somebody is telling you something racist, like Rashida Tlaib, she actually should have came harder. But flip it around. If she said something offensive that a white person found offensive, or Barack Obama, who was constantly accused of being racist towards white people, if in a congressional hearing a black congressman just stood up a random white person, just a total rando that nobody really knows, and said, well, this person works in the administration and he would never work for a black person that's racist. Like, it sounds ridiculous on its face. And if you didn't think that was racist, if you didn't think, or just at the very least stupid, like at the very least stupid, then you flip it around. It sounds even more ridiculous when you flip it around the other way. But yeah, but flip what you're saying. If someone points something out to you, and this is just for anybody, if somebody says something, you said something offensive, whether it's racist or sexist or just offensive toward that person in general, flip it around. Reverse it to yourself. Reverse it to the opposite situation. If it sounds ridiculous, it probably is ridiculous on both sides. So that's all I got to say. Everybody love everybody. Like, subscribe, all that wonderful jazz. Holla at y'all.